Hey, good morning from me, good afternoon, and good evening to you two. How's it going?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you might be. Going good,
Yeah,
thanks.
welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, good to have you back on, Daniel, and thanks for joining us for the first time as well on Analytic Endeavors.
Yeah, looks good here. You guys are teaming up, rebranding. What's the deal here?
Teaming up for sure, and less of rebranding, more of just combining into a new org that's focusing more on enterprise clients, things that are needed more in backend. Essentially, data platform is the primary focus for a lot of the stuff that we've been working on, and figured it would be easier to start that anew rather than to try to rebrand any of the existing companies that either of us own separately.
Yeah, makes sense. Nice.
Yep, me and Reid have been working together for a while on trainings and stuff, so I thought this would be a great time, and also talk about great topics like enterprise stuff like Tabular Editor. So really excited to have you on.
Cool.
And as with most great ideas, it started over a pint at the SQLBits conference a few years back. It was it's like, hey, like we both have like training content. We should consider maybe doing a collab training, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. It's been a while since I was on this channel last time. Oh, well, not this channel actually, but your channel, Reed. But yeah, super excited to be here. And I think we have a pretty exciting topic for today to talk about. So yeah.
Yeah, it's always a welcome opportunity to be able to get you back on to talk about with Tabular Editor being such a cornerstone of external tools, as the landscape continues to evolve, I think its uses continues to, like, I would say there's add removals and modifications of like how it can be used as Fabric and everything grows. So I will be very interested to hear kind of with AI and everything else and all these new bells and whistles in Fabric, like where does this thing fit in place within that ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially because the ecosystem is growing as fast as it's doing, it seems that there's
And
also a bit
yeah.
of misconceptions around some of the things, like do we even need tabulators anymore? For one thing, and my answer to that, of course, is yes. But yeah, so hopefully we can address some of these questions, doubts that people may have during the stream.
Absolutely. Now, overall, I would say especially now with the new Fabric integrations, just as a quick mention, I'll say personally, one of my favorite things has been just the ability to do more and more write back to, or writing to and modifications to everything in terms of all of the items that are in the cloud, especially with the lake houses and everything else. So it's been, from a personal experience and anecdotally, fun to watch the Tabular Editor tool kind of grow with the integration of all that other stuff, because they're more, certainly didn't from Microsoft, more and more emphasis on people leaning towards like modeling and the lakehouse scenarios and other stuff in certain instances. So being able to have that just plug and play to a degree has been very helpful, especially with large models or anything else that just lives in the cloud, because I think that's, in a way, Microsoft's end goal is to at least have a continuously growing percentage of model or model-like objects existing in the cloud only, built in the cloud, maintained at the cloud, and like not really ever tooled in a like local desktop experience.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems that that's the direction that we're going in. I mean, the good news is that regardless of how we twist and turn this, the semantic model itself is just becoming even more prevalent. And I mean, if you want to do analytics on the Microsoft stack, you will need at least one semantic model somewhere in the stack. And it's clear now with all of the new integrations that are coming, Semantic Link, that we're also going to talk about, that the semantic model is just front and center in everything we do. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, because it is an amazing piece of technology.
Yeah, I would agree. And just let's go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm definitely agree with that. I mean, actually, a lot of my talks are all around semantic models to this point coming up. It's a point where business users can access the backend that we've set up so much. So I think semantic model to me has always been Power BI's strongest point. Something really, really amazing. So definitely agree.
Yeah,
And just one little point of like an anecdotal tale on like how essential a semantic model is. I recently got hired by a company to come and essentially build them a golden data set because they didn't think they really needed semantic models. And so I'll just ask you, like, what do you think a company would do if they don't think a semantic model is necessary? They want to build Power BI reports and they have a database. How do you think all the reports are built?
Without a semantic model, well,
They would, like, without a like traditional import semantic model, what would you do if you think you just could skip that step?
Well,
Direct query, everything.
Okay,
Pure direct query. Like it's still technically a model because it is building like a schema and all that, but like they tried to jump past that, like, oh, this is not necessary. And then of course, things are slow and all this other stuff. So it was a learning experience and it was self-taught, but it just, as an anecdotal quip for that, I think it was it just continues to show how necessary like a properly built one is for your ecosystem. And if you don't have one properly configured, or you try to avoid it entirely, you're going to run into a lot of problems.
Yeah, but I mean, even in that case, when you're creating a direct query model, at the end of the day, you're still creating a semantic model. It's using a different storage mode,
exactly.
Right? So,
it's a very bad semantic model that doesn't store any data in that capacity.
Yeah.
In my head canon, I considered a true semantic model something that has like at least some amount of imported information. If it's like 100% pass through, it's basically just, it's the metadata layer that's just simply translating the data into the visual. But otherwise, like you have zero performance benefits from it. But digressions aside and all that, that's something we could talk about forever. But I do want to see, like, I guess from the broad concept of everything that we have today in terms of, AI, all this stuff in Fabric and how like Tabular Editor plugs and plays into that. Where would you like to start the kind of the conversation on what we can be getting into with today's topic?
So I did actually prepare a few slides to sort of just set the scene and just for any people on the stream who might not be that familiar with Tabular Editor, just to sort of get an understanding. And I have to apologize in advance because we're kind of in the midst of a rebrand right now. So we're getting like new PowerPoint templates and everything. And for some reason, our marketing person decided to put my face on the on sort of the front page master slide, which I don't really like, but I just decided to roll with it. But that's also kind of ties into another point that I would like to make about the company, is that we are sort of growing. If you guys remember, we started out back in 2021. That's also around the time when I was a guest on your Havens Consulting channel, Reed. Back then, it was just basically me and my partner Søren, who did all of the heavy lifting, everything in terms of starting up this company and starting to ship our software. But now, fast forward 4 years, we are starting to grow as a team. We are a substantial number of people now in the company, including people who just deal with marketing and social media and that stuff. And we're also seeing a great growth in terms of customers. We have customers more or less all over the world now, which is great. We're still, as a company, we're still sort of, our main office is in Denmark, although we have a few people also joining the team from outside of Denmark. We have, I think Greg just joined the chat, Greg Baldini, who's in New Jersey. And then we also have people in Hamburg and a few other places. So definitely growing. So we're on a great trajectory with this company, which is something that I'm very proud of. But just to circle back to the semantic model stuff we talked about, and I'll make that brief. I really like this slide because this sort of emphasizes how the semantic model is sort of the center of everything that we do in the world of Microsoft data and analytics. Getting in the data from various sources, be they warehouses, lakehouses, databases, files, and so on. We can model everything. We can model our business processes. We can apply structure and logic and calculations to basically mirror real life business processes inside of our semantic model. And the outcome of that is that we can then have users create reports, pivot tables, even today use generative AI, that's a tough word, and do various stuff using intelligent automation and various and basically making the data that we expose in the semantic model actionable in various ways. But again, all of this wouldn't be possible unless we had a way to actually model our business, and that's exactly what the semantic model offers. So we like to think of it as the central nervous system of your analytics solution, like the brain, basically. So you give it some input and you get a meaningful output. And this is basically where Tabular Editor comes in, because as you know, Tabular Editor is a tool that lets you edit these semantic models. So to put it in another way, just like a brain, you know, models are very important, as I just pointed out, and they can also be very complex depending on the data volumes and the complexity of the business processes that you're trying to model. So this means that they take significant time and effort to design and make. As a BI consultant for 10 years, I know how many hours I spent doing business workshops, trying to understand the business matrix in order to model the various facts and dimension tables that I would need. This stuff takes time, and even if you have a clear idea of what kind of questions you want the model to be able to answer, it still takes time to set everything up inside the model. That can be common. So it's very rare to have an organization that can just make do with a single model to model the entire enterprise. Typically, you would need several smaller models for various reasons. That could be for security purposes, or it could be just because you don't want to have one big model containing everything. You want to have smaller specialized models answering the needs of the various business departments, business areas. They can have common elements for sure. The calendar table being an obvious example of something that you will see in most models, but each of them will still be quite unique and certainly complex. Now, if there's a problem in one of them, if some calculation does not provide the expected value, then you need to troubleshoot it somehow. You need to debug it, and that can also be quite a complex endeavor, especially if you're not that well versed in things like DAX. And this is actually one of the things that I foresee will become a more prevalent issue once people start to rely more on AI. On CoPilot to create DAX calculations, because sure, you may be able to write a prompt and the CoPilot comes up with some DAX that seems to work and provides the correct value, but maybe it only works in that particular context. So as soon as you slice that measure with something else, maybe then it starts to break down. And then what do you do? So debugging can be difficult. I think I saw this meme somewhere on the Reddit programmer humor subreddit, where it's like, so in the past you would spend days solving a problem, programming it, and then a few hours debugging if it didn't work. Now with AI, it only takes you 5 minutes to actually write the code, but then you end up spending days debugging it afterwards. So,
yeah.
And the same thing will definitely apply here, I think. So it's good to keep in mind. And then, of course, there's again, as the central nervous system of your analytics platform, it needs to be reliable, secure, accurate, and last but not least, it needs to be performant. And those are all disciplines that semantic model developers need to know about, the competencies, things they need to learn and understand. And yeah, it's just Rome wasn't built in one day, and these things takes time. And so Tabular Editor was built as a tool to help address some of these challenges. So first of all, we tried to make a UI that reduces the friction as much as possible, making you more productive, more efficient when you're building the model. We also put a lot of effort in making sure that everything you create using Tabular Editor can be easily reused. There's a lot of automation and a lot of emphasis on making batch changes that can cut through the complexity of the model. Then we also want to highlight the fact that we want to help you build better quality models, and that's where things like the best practice analyzer that we have as a feature comes into play to proactively identify issues before they become an actual problem in a production model. So yeah, all in all, I think we as part of this rebranding that I talked about, that we're part of, we also came up with a new tagline, which is basically that we want to let you build better data models faster. And I know they are called semantic models, but better data models just rolls better off the tongue than better semantic models. So yeah, but again, yeah,
Agreed.
that's marketing. So yeah. So just before we jump into a demo, just to set in stone what exactly Tabular Editor is. Well, it's an offline tool that you install on your Windows machine, and it lets you edit semantic models in different flavors, starting from SQL Server 2016. Which hopefully not a lot of people are still using, but you could still be using on-premises analysis services up to SQL Server 2022. Or you could be using Azure Analysis Services. It's all semantic models under the hood. And then, of course, also for Power BI Desktop, Premium, Embedded, and now also with Fabric. At the end of the day, the semantic model is the same type of technology that runs on all these different flavors. So yeah, that's sort of the short version. I just wanted to quickly recap since the last time I was on your channel, Reed, which is a little over 3 years ago now. It was I just checked. It was December 17th, 2021. We had the
Was that the last time you were on?
Yeah, it was. That's when I presented the DAX debugger, which was the major new.
Yeah. Okay.
We did a stream
Been too long.
1 year before that, which was actually when Tabular Editor 3 was in closed beta. So that was even before it was released. That's sort of when we showed it to the world for the first time.
I will still say, just I feel humbled and appreciative that you wanted to come on to my stream to like essentially announce both of those things. So again, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah, so just to quickly recap what has happened, we shipped 38 new releases of Tabular Editor. 19 of them were like major version updates that had major new feature additions. But overall, there has just been too many new features and things to mention. And I did actually prepare like a list, and I'm not sure we will have time to go over all of the most interesting things. But I tried to sort of prioritize them, so we'll at least make sure to demo the most important ones. We also launched our digital learning platform, Tabular Editor Learn, which has, I think internally we say it's 24 hours. In reality, it's probably more like 40 or 50 hours of free content all around best practices for semantic models, advanced topics like how to set up incremental refresh and all of that stuff. And it's a free. You just need to sign up with an email address and then you get started. As part of this, we also created like a demo data set revolving around a fictional space company, or a company that services spaceships and space parts. We're all huge geeks here. I believe you had Kurt on the stream recently. He's the main author behind this data set, and he's as much of a space nerd as I am. So that's a nice little. There's a lot of theming in the data set, and it's actually quite complex. And I mean, compared to other sample data sets like AdventureWorks and those stuff, I believe the space parts data set is more reminiscent of an actual real life model, something you as a consultant could encounter in real life at some point. So.
As a quick, just nerdy mention on that, he has some like he had very specific, like, I wouldn't say, I don't know if algorithm is the right word, but special functions to seasonalize and put a lot of noise into the data, like bad data, like random spikes. So like to your point, like stuff that is, I think it's one of the data sets that is, it's fake, that is the closest to a real world data set that I've seen, because it has clear problems and mistakes that
exactly,
I think make it a lot more real to work with, rather than like perfect data in InventionWorks, where you can clearly tell it has like a repetitive seasonality that like perfectly matches each other and everything.
Yeah. Kurt spent a lot of time. I think he created Python scripts or something like that to generate the data, and they are very, very complex. And you end up with this model that I mean, it looks like something you could find in a real life automotive company or something like that. They have you'll see a lot of that, and there's also, he hit a lot of nice little Easter eggs. in it. Like if you look at the table that contains the names of customers, you'll find references to various real life individuals in there as well. So it's it's really nice and worth checking out this learning platform just for that data set, in my opinion.
It's a great learning platform, I'd say. Really fun one to go ahead. I've gone through it. It's good fun and it keeps you really engaged. So big shout out to that, and free as well. So it's really good.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we really try to make something that keeps you engaged. And by the way, there's also a free exam, certification exam you can take at the end of it. Although I should probably warn people that it's pretty tough. I mean, you have to actually study and go through the modules to have a chance to pass. In the beginning, we got a lot of complaints from users saying that it was too difficult and they failed it too many times. But then the problem is that if we then decided to lower the difficulty, it would just sort of devalue those who had already passed it, right? So we decided actually to keep it at the current difficulty. So
I would say even I scraped by on the very first one, but the first time I took it. But you are right. It is difficult because it needs to be, because it's trying to test for comprehension. And I think they got patched when I was working with with one of your colleagues. But yeah, there were a couple of questions that were a little bit of like gotchas initially that got all patched up. Because it's one of those where it's like I think I read it 5 times and in my head it read differently than what it was supposed to be asking, kind of a thing. Yeah. But writing exam questions is really hard, like, because you have to account for people who have English as a second language, and this is coming from me working with Microsoft like exam teams for some of the MS exams. I'm surprised on how much review is involved in actually getting a question to be the correct way that it's written. So it's like once you get one, which yours is a really good one. Like it is a lot of time and love to get it well written, and also for testing for the correct knowledge.
Yeah. So obviously super happy about that feedback, and yeah, I'll forward it to Kurt, because most of it is actually his mind that came up with all of the questions and most of the content and so on. So yeah. So lastly, I'd also just like to highlight that we have been able to sponsor over 35 conferences these past years, so mostly community conferences around the globe, and that's something that I'm also personally very proud of. That thanks to this commercialization of the tool, that we've actually had enough bandwidth to be able to sort of give back to the community, in addition to the Learn platform, but also help these community efforts in creating great conferences, user group events, and so on. So that's something I'm also really happy about. And on that note, we will actually be at FabCon in Vegas in a few weeks. So if you happen to be there, then by all means stop by and say hi. All right. So with that said, let's jump into the demo. So I did prepare a few things, but I think we can just start in one place and look at some of the new features that were introduced since 2021, and then we'll just see where the discussions and the questions takes us. So I think the very first feature that I would like to show you, which is kind of a new feature, it was announced in the fall, I believe around November or December last year, is a feature called code actions. So basically what that is it allows us to take so anytime we have a DAX expression in, for example, it could be just in the code editor like here, or it could be if we have a more complex expression, even a DAX script or a DAX query. For now, let me script all of the DAX expressions on my invoices table. You'll notice that now the scroll bar has these little colored indicators. Each of these correspond. If I click on them, I'll navigate to that part in my code, and then we can see on the left here there's a small light bulb icon, and also there's these little dots under the word calculate. So basically, these are the code actions that I'm talking about, and this is a feature that we made to help you improve your DAX code as you write it, as you type it out. If anyone is familiar with ReSharper, which is a plugin to Visual Studio for C# code development, this is actually inspired by what ReSharper does in that it also suggests various refactorings and changes you can make to your code as you type to improve it, make sure that you use a consistent style, and so on. So in this case, just as an example, what this code action suggests is that we get rid of the calculate function. And now a question to you guys: why would it make sense to get rid of calculate here? It's a trick question. This is in the context of a measure, and there's no row.
The other thing I would think of is if it's enforcing a context transition that you wouldn't want. That would be my only thought initially.
Yeah, so basically the point here is that there is no row context, since this is just this is in the root basically of a measure definition. So there's no row context, and moreover there's no filter specified. So
yeah,
the calculate
okay.
does nothing.
Yep.
There's no context to transition basically. So we can get rid of it, and that's exactly what the code action does. So when once I click, it just immediately edits the code and gets rid of the calculate. And there's plenty of stuff like that. So here's another great example where it's suggesting that we use divide instead of division. So here's the division symbol, but the entire, so this is the entire numerator of the division expression. That's why the code action shows up here. And again, what do you think would be the reason why we should replace this divide operation with a division? Oh, sorry, or replace the division with a divide, I should say. We should use the divide function instead of division. That's the point of this code action. Any guesses?
What do you think, Steve?
The divide by zero errors we're trying to avoid here.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So this expression is not guaranteed to be non-zero. So you could have a rate value that's 0 in the budget rate table. There's no way to know that or to guarantee that. So in order to make sure that we don't get a runtime error, basically, in case this is 0, we could either manually check for 0, or better yet, we could use the built-in divide function, which has that check built in. So yeah, that's a nice little refactoring to make. Now, after we did this, there's another interesting bit here. Like, notice how so now it gets a little complicated, but there's another one here that's interesting. Like, move constant aggregation to variable. So what's that all about? Well, we have an iterator up here. So we have SumX, and inside of SumX, if I just bring up the call tip for this, let me go up here. You can see right now we're in the expression part of the SumX function, and expression is evaluated in a row context. So basically, this entire expression will be evaluated once for every row of the invoices table. Now, this expression, on the other hand, returns the same value. It's not impacted by the row context of invoices. So there's no point in evaluating this for every single row. So instead, we would be better off by just capturing the value in a variable outside of the SumX iteration, and then using that variable inside the iteration. So if I click on this code action, we can see now it introduces a new variable. It even tries to provide a good name for that variable. We can change it if we don't like it. And then it references that variable inside of the SumX expression instead. So this would be basically a more efficient way of writing this DAX code, because then we don't needlessly perform this calculation once for every row of the invoices table that we're iterating. Now, in practice, there's probably some optimizations built into the analysis services engine, the semantic modeling engine, where it can detect when stuff like this happens, and so we probably won't see any performance difference by rewriting the code this way. But still, from an intuitive or from a perspective of someone who's just learning DAX, it may be helpful for them to understand that, hey, we can just write a variable out here and move that calculation outside of the iteration, and it would still return the same result.
I see this as a really powerful tool to help learn those DAX best practices as well, rather than just to improve your code, just to go through this and learn those best practices, because it's easy to read them, and listen to them, someone teach you them, but unless you're actually writing your own code, it's sometimes a bit harder to kind of understand how to apply them. So it's something that's looking at code you're writing and helping you along the way. I really like that.
Yeah, and on that note, so now I just I hit Control Z a few times just to get the original code back. So there is also like a link that will take you to a web page where you can get some more information about what this code action is suggesting and why Tabular Editor is suggesting this, with a few examples of how to change. So some idealized examples basically of what the change does. So this is also a very easy place to get some more information about this this code action and what the purpose of it is. So there were a couple of more that I would like to show you. So this one is also a personal favorite of mine. So how many times have you seen expressions like this, where you sort of compound expressions, where you combine different different comparisons with the OR operator because you want to check whether a value is one of these three? And I mean, this syntax is perfectly fine. It works. It just exactly what it does exactly what it says. However, in newer versions of DAX, there's actually a much more concise way of expressing this this filter. We can use the in operator and just write it like this instead. So that's also something the code actions can help us do. So yeah, so here's another similar example of that.
Readability and simplicity is just as important in code as optimization, I think. So yeah, definitely you're learning.
Yeah.
And I will say the like, regardless of whether or not you like things tall or wide in your code, is as long as you've done something to separate and to the readability perspective, I don't think there's a wrong answer on that. It's the, you know, dude, does the comma go after or before? And whatever those conversations there, it's subjective. But yes, make the code somewhat readable for your own sake and others if you need to look at this in 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan is that we're going to provide like a list of all of the code actions inside of the user interface itself in the preferences, so that you can toggle them on and off. So maybe there are a few of them that you don't that you would like us to not suggest, then we will have a way for you to toggle them off. Right now, there are some things that you can configure. For example, if you would like us to always enforce a certain prefix for variables. So right now I set it to underscore, but maybe I would like to use. I know Ed Hansberry. I've seen him on X. He has some very strong opinions on what prefix to use for variables. So we can actually configure that. So if we change it in here, then we will immediately see that now it also suggests that we change the prefix on variables to include var underscore or whatever. So that's also a matter of personal preference and style, and that's also something that Tabular Editor can help you with. All right. So yeah, so that's code actions. Great little feature. It will help you be much more productive and make sure that you write more consistent DAX code according to these actions. You can find a full list of the actions that we currently support on our website. There's like this table here. We provide a code for each of them, and then the corresponding article for why you should write things in one way over another. So definitely check that out. So the next feature that I would like to highlight is also a great one that we've been shipped quite recently. I think within the past, was it in November or December also? Anyway, it was quite recent. So as you know, Tabular Editor has this DAX query editor. It has all of the like the intelligence functionality to help you type out your code faster, and that's all good. But one of the things that comes up a lot is like, let's say you have a very complex DAX expression or DAX query in here with lots of different. Let me see if I can get the. What's the name of my date table here? Is date. So let's add date, calendar month, for example, and let's do something like this. So first of all, we have added the ability to sort of rearrange and apply like filters to the result of your DAX calculation, and these will then stick. So the next time you execute the query, we try to sort of retain whatever customization you applied to the grid here, like changing the column widths or the order of the columns, and even the filter and the sorting that you apply to it. And we try to make that stick even if you make changes to the model. So if you add another measure here, for example, we try to keep the existing sorting and filtering, provided the same columns exist. Oh, I see. I need to change this to, so there's a setting here that says keep sorting and filtering. We set that to always. Previously it was set to when query is unchanged, so now we set it to always. Let me try to rerun that. So I run this and I filter just a few months here, and I sort products by color, and I move my net sales over here, and then I add gross sales and I run the query again, and then you can see it retains the filtering and the sorting from before. So this way, making it easier to work iteratively on a query like this. But that's not all. Sometimes you want to inspect just a single value or just parts of your query. So let's say you have this particular measure and you just want to see, okay, so this measure in isolation, what does this return? Well, just highlight it, hit F5, and then we get just this value. And you don't even need to move the mouse to highlight something. You can just put the cursor somewhere. Then we have a shortcut that lets you expand the selection to the next sort of logical block. If I hit it again, it'll eventually encompass the entire query. It depends on, again, the complexity of the expression. And this works for measures. It works for, let's say I put in some other calculation here where I do like a sum x over some table, something like this. And let's say just do it for this particular table. I can run just run basically whatever I selected. So a partial query essentially. So it's clever enough to figure out that, hey, okay, so now I selected the name of a table. Well, in order to actually run something, I need to convert this into, first of all, I need to add evaluate in front of it. And then for good measure, we just limit it to only show the first 1,000 rows, just to make sure that we don't overload the server or anything like that. And this works with different types of objects. So I can even select a column and hit F5, and it'll just give me the unique or the distinct values of that column. So that's also super useful as you're typing out your query, and maybe you want to apply a filter somewhere and you forgot what values you actually have in that column. Well, just select the column, hit F5, and then you see the values of that column. So yeah, that's partial query execution, and that's also a relatively new feature in Tabular Editor 3, but one that I think can really help you boost your productivity when you're working on DAX queries.
Really, really cool feature that. I think if you've used the DAX view in Power BI Desktop, although really, really cool, you have to write everything as a table expression, and just being able to do that on a measure, on a column. I love that.
Yeah, I sometimes call it like a poor man's debugger, because that's typically how you debug complex DAX expressions. You write out, you get the full query, and then you comment code in and comment code out, and then you run things in isolation. But with this, you don't no longer need to add comments or remove comments from your code. You just highlight the portion of the query that you want to execute and hit F5, and then you see the result of that calculation. So we do, of course, have a real debugger as an alternative for that, but that's actually not a new feature since 2021. So I don't want to cover that here. We went into great detail on that on our last stream together. But if you just want quick and dirty, just view the results of a calculation, be it a scalar expression or a table expression, just highlight it, hit F5, and then you're good. All right, so let's see. Oh yeah, and another neat feature related to querying the data is that if you have a results like this and you just highlight a number of cells, look at the bottom toolbar here, or status bar. This provides like instant information if you want to make some checks or whatever. We just provide the most common aggregations of that. It's very similar to Excel. I believe it has the same thing when you select multiple numeric cells. So just at the tip of your tongue, if you need to know the sum of these values, well, just multi-select. You can also hold down the control key and just pick various cells in between. They don't need to be contiguous. And this works both in the query results grid that we see here, but also in our pivot table component, or pivot grid, as it's called in Tabular Editor. So if I add some values here, and let's also add some colors, then we can do the same thing, and you can see we get these summarized indicators down here at the bottom. It's just a small feature like that. That's pretty good to know about. So yeah, and speaking of the pivot grid, another improvement we shipped, I think about half a year ago, is that you can now actually save these layouts, pivot grid layouts, as files that you can then bring up at any time. Because maybe you spend a lot of time configuring a grid. Maybe you set up certain, let's say, rows and columns, and maybe you even applied certain cell highlighting. Let's go with this one. And you know, think, well, okay, this might be for whatever reason a good metric of the quality of the data in my model or something like that. Maybe I should save this so I can reuse it. Well, first of all, you can copy the MDX query if you're interested in that sort of thing. But now you can also just save this grid as a file. And then if you get back to this model, or even if you connect to a different model that has the same data, like let's say you're switching between a test and a production environment, well, now you can just reopen the pivot table and it will be configured with exactly the same fields and coloring and highlighting as when you had it open just a moment ago. So let's see. There's so much new stuff here. So another interesting new bit is that we, of course, also support direct lake models. So you can either create a direct lake model from scratch using Tabular Editor. There's a few things that needs to be configured in a special way when you set up the semantic model. That's why we provide this checkbox here when you initially create the model. But you can, of course, also connect to existing direct lake models in your Fabric workspaces and then just work on them. There are a few caveats, a few things to be aware of. Let's see, I guess I can use this one. Get rid of those.
You got to say the consultant answer. It's not a caveat. It's an it depends scenario.
Right. Yeah. That's a good one. So this was a boring model without any tables. So let's go with. Oh, actually, I forget where I have my. So what I wanted to point out is that when you are making changes to direct lake models using third-party tools, there are a few things to be aware of. Specifically, it's the wrong workspace. I think I need to be in this one instead. Or is it this one? Sorry about that. Oh yeah, here's one we can use. So the workspace was. Do we even have that here? No. What was the name of the workspace? It was Fabric T3 Dev. All right, here we go. So here is my sample warehouse test. So this is a direct lake model. And so what I want to call out here is that you need to be careful when you're, so the way we can tell that this is direct lake is that each partition is of, so first of all, it says so right here in the title bar, obviously. But one other thing you can look at is the partitions of each table. Normally, when you're dealing with an import or direct query model, you will see an M expression that defines the source data for that partition, for that table. For a direct lake model, on the other hand, we have a special concept here called entity partitions, and these basically just refer to a particular entity in the underlying warehouse or lake house. And all of that is defined through a shared expression, which basically defines the SQL analytics endpoint of that data warehouse. So that's basically how direct lake models are configured. They look a little bit differently in this regard than normal import models. But what I wanted to call out here is that if you make changes to this model, like let's say, okay, so let me now connect to the SQL analytics endpoint. And I need to use Azure AD authentication, of course. So give me a second while I sign in. So basically, I'm using Tabular Editor's schema compare feature here to see if there are any new columns that needs to be imported from the lakehouse to the database to the semantic model. Now in this case, the selected table is up to date. However, let's say that the model didn't contain these 3 columns, Now, if I run the update table schema again, it'll detect that these columns exist in the source, but they are not imported into the model. So the question is then, do I want to import them or not? If I choose OK, then I have basically modified the tables of the columns of my table here. And then when I save this change, it all works. It flows back to the semantic model in Fabric. Now the problem is if I eventually decide to go in here and edit my semantic model through the web interface, I can certainly do that. However, there needs to be certain metadata in place to specify. So let me switch to edit mode here. If I go into the edit tables dialog here and do like a refresh of the tables using this interface, then I might lose some of the changes that I made through Tabular Editor. And that is basically because we need to specify depending on the types of changes we make. Like let's say we're changing the data type of a column, or we're introducing a different name for a column. Then there is this array of different properties that we could set. Like let's say I change the name of this, new name, whatever. If I want to keep that name after applying after doing this edit table operation inside of Fabric, then I need to explicitly specify that the name has been sort of decoupled from what the name of this column is in the source warehouse. So that's one area where direct lake models sort of differ from regular models, because the Fabric service, whenever you use this edit table feature, it tries to keep everything in sync between your direct lake model and the underlying warehouse. So yeah, it's just something to be aware of if you need to make changes to things like the names of columns, the data types, and so on, compared to what their underlying names and data types are in the source. But the point here is that Tabular Editor lets you set up these change properties. Of course, you could also do it through the temple view if you're working with the direct lake model in desktop. But yeah, and maybe speaking of Temple, maybe we should change gears here a little bit, because Temple, as you know, is a serialization format. So it's a format that you could choose when you are saving a semantic model. We have that now as an option in Power BI Desktop, that we can save it as Temple. We can also use so in Tabular Editor we also have, where is the file format? It's right here, save to folder. Now, historically, Tabular Editor has had a serialization format that let you basically take the model metadata from one file and split it up into many smaller files, just for the sake of making it easier to integrate your model metadata with the version control environment. Now, when was Temple released? Was it like last year, or was it 2 years ago? I don't remember.
2 years ago was when it was like announced. It was about a year and a half ago when it like came out into preview.
Yeah. And this is now, I mean, these days this makes perfect sense because it's a much more readable format than the JSON-based metadata that we have used in the past. So, for example, if I take this model and I now save it as a folder, let's add a subfolder here called Tyndall, and we save it in here, then we end up with a folder that looks like, where is it? So yeah, so here's the model with the old format, which is this JSON-based BIM file, where you can see this is JSON and there's a ton of stuff in there, and especially with things like DAX expressions, this is pretty cumbersome to work with, because whenever you have a quote inside the actual DAX expression, then you need to escape it with a backslash in front and all of that. Whereas with the new Temple format that we have here, we can open, for example, the database temple. You see that's quite simple. We'll have one for each of the tables in the model. Let's go with the geography table. So it's a much more like human-friendly, readable version of the same model metadata. And things like DAX expressions, you don't need to worry about escaping double quotes. You just type out the DAX expression as is. So it's an excellent format for working with the model metadata. And recently, Microsoft also introduced the Temple view inside of Power BI Desktop, as you know.
Uh-huh.
So you can basically now edit this format directly inside of Power BI Desktop. And then, I mean, the good news about this is that it basically means that advanced semantic model objects and properties that were previously not accessible. Let's open one of these. Let's open this guy here. So things like object level security and perspectives and metadata translations are things that Power BI previously did not have any user interface anywhere where you could actually set up these perspectives and translations, and that's why some people thought that you had to use Tabular Editor basically in order to access these advanced objects and properties.
Exactly.
Technically, that it's not like that you had to do it, but it's just that Tabular Editor was probably the more convenient option, because you could still just save the model as Tyndall and then edit these objects using a text editor, right? Editing the files directly. But now, of course, with the Tyndall view, you have all of that directly inside the model. So you could even script these perspectives. So you could get them. So now this one is probably not that. Yeah, this one has a few interesting bits. So now you can view these objects and you can edit them directly in the Tyndall. You can make your changes. You can even ask CoPilot to make some changes to this document, and then you can apply these changes back to the model. Of course, with Tabular Editor, we have had UI for these features like perspectives for a while now. So specifically for perspectives, let's try to open the same model that we currently have open in Power BI Desktop, and then let's open our perspective editor. So we see the perspectives like this instead. So basically, with a series of checkboxes that indicates which objects belong to which perspective. So you can of course decide whether you prefer this approach to editing the perspectives, or whether you just do it through the checkboxes. Of course, the bottom line here is that thanks to the Tyndall view, there is no longer any object or any property in the semantic or what's it called, the tabular object model TOM, that you can no longer access through Power BI. Now everything is accessible, and that's of course a good thing, because it means that companies will no longer be forced to use a third-party tool to get access to this stuff. It's all built in right into desktop. But I would like to address a bit of a misunderstanding, because some people use the term Tyndall scripting for this,
No.
which I think is kind of misleading, because it's not really scripting in the sense that, like, we have C# scripting in Tabular Editor, and I'll show an example in a little bit just to show the difference. But you have to keep in mind that this is just a serialization format, meaning it's just defining what the objects in the model are, what their names are, what the property values are, and so on. But it's not like you can create let's say a for loop, or define a variable, or connect to some write some code in here that connects to an API and take some data from there or whatever. So just let's make that straight, that this is not scripting in the sense that creating a PowerShell script or even a Python notebook or whatever. It is just a serialization format. It's super convenient to have that directly inside of Power BI. It's like a code behind view of your model, which I really like, but it's not a scripting language. So just to put that out there and get that straight.
Yeah, I think for your point, like it's anything that iterates, that can have multiple steps, that actually scripts, like for people who aren't familiar with it, which I would say a lot of the majority of the desktop only developers are business users, so I can see why they mistook the two of them. But as you mentioned, it's good to point out things that are full scripting languages that can batch together a lot of stuff versus like essentially a single action of a transfer, update, or something else that can be done, because there's no way to add a wait statement or anything else, or this first then that. It's essentially just done in bulk, to keep it simple when you have that stuff, which is very useful if you want to if you have a DAX calendar table, you want to transfer between two workbooks, you can do that in Tyndall. But if you want something that's going to copy paste, but detailed stuff that's going to go through it and intelligently say, maybe replace measure names with only certain properties, or a bunch of like nuanced stuff like that.
In fact, I did actually prepare just a small showcase of that.
Oh, beautiful.
So for example, in Tabular Editor, we have this concept of macros, and macros are basically just C# scripts that have been saved so that they can be reused and so that they are integrated in the UI. And in this case, for example, let's take a look at this table over here. As you can see, this table has a very deeply nested structure of display folders. So these measures are like, what is this, 3 or 4 levels deep into a display folder structure. And some people think that's nice. Other people would like a more flat hierarchy of measures within display folders. So with something like this, it won't be easy to do like a simple. So what we can do over here is I believe we can just script the entire invoices table. So let's script this. And then we can look at all of the measures, and sure enough, we can find the display folders there all around, and maybe we can do some things using find and replace. But let's say we wanted to add some logic to how we want the display folders to be structured. Like every measure that has the words gross sales in its name should be in a gross sales folder, and every measure that has the names net sales in its name should be in a net sales display folder, and margin in margin, and the rest of them we just put in the other folder. So I don't think you can just find and replace your way to obtain that using the template view.
Yeah.
It might even be difficult to instruct CoPilot to do it. Maybe you could get there, but I must admit I haven't tested CoPilot for something like that. But in this case, it's just a 10-line script in Tabular Editor. So let's try to run this script on the invoices table and see what happens. And now we have this nice flat structure of display folders for all of our measures. So this is the power of scripts, in that you can build logic into these scripts and basically decide what the script needs to do when it encounters certain things, certain model objects, and basically deal with that. So this is scripting, and so just contrasting that to Temple, where you cannot add these kinds of control structures in your in the Temple view in desktop. If you wanted to do something like this using just first-party tools, then the thing that comes closest to this is Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs, where you use Python basically and through Semantic Link Labs you will have access to the entire object model as well. So there it should be pretty simple to make a similar script, although in Python, that would do something like this. However, I would say that the advantage of Tabular Editor in this regard is that you get instant feedback on what your script is doing. So now I just ran the script and it applied the change to the local copy of the model metadata that Tabular Editor holds in memory. So I didn't actually save these changes back to the whatever Power BI or analysis services that I opened the model from. I just ran the script locally and it makes some changes. If I discover that some of these changes are not what I intend them to be, I can simply hit undo and it'll just roll back whatever changes the script that I just executed in Tabular Editor applied. I don't think Semantic Link has anything to that effect. So first of all, visualizing the tabular object model as you make your changes. And secondly, being able to roll back any changes that you make. For that, you'll have to rely on source control, which of course these days with Fabric and Git integration is also a very, very viable option for these things. But still, at the end of the day, I personally, and of course I'm biased, but I just feel that it's more convenient to apply these things in Tabular Editor.
End of the day, whatever saves you time and works best for you. But like the thing that I also do, just as I mentioned, like a lot about Tabular Editor with a lot of these scripts that you have available is like the community resources available for them are very extensive, either through the official libraries or some of the unofficial ones. So it's Google is your friend when it comes to just being able to look up some of this. Go ahead.
And ChatGPT is probably even more your friend these days.
Yeah.
Because what ChatGPT lacks in its ability to write DAX code, it makes up for in its ability to write C#. So if you're new to C# and you want to learn how it's done, just ask your favorite LLM to write you a Tabular Editor C# script to do whatever, and it'll cook up something that is guaranteed to work 90% of the time. If it doesn't, and it makes a mistake, well, you just hit Control-Z in Tabular Editor and then you try again. So that's definitely a good way to learn these things. And speaking of learning C# scripts, I also like to call out our macro recorder that we have as a feature in Tabular Editor. So basically, there's this button you can hit, record script. So now you see my C# script here is recording. And now every time I make a change to an object here, so let me select these 3 objects and let me just write some description here. You can see it will generate the equivalent C# code for the changes that I just made. So for those of you who are old enough to remember, like back in the good old days of the VBA macros in Office applications like Word, Excel, and so on, this is very similar to that. It also had the record feature where you could start a recording and then it would generate the VBA code for you as you made changes to your Excel workbook or whatever. And this is similar to that. So that's also a very good place to learn what these C# scripts can do, or to figure out what the equivalent C# command would be of something that I can do through the Tabular Editor UI.
Exactly.
Very cool. Who doesn't love VBA?
Exactly. Yeah. So I forget how much time did we set aside, because I mean I can keep going forever, but the question is when are we aiming?
We always have a soft hour for this stuff, so I'd say like if you have another 15 minutes or so, I'd say
Okay.
of stuff to go through, we can use that to probably wrap up between like 45 to 50.
Yep, sure thing. So let's go back to because I also want to get into the so now we did discuss already a little bit about like TMDL, how it's really good for like low fidelity reuse of patterns, as we talked about, copy pasting stuff around, but how if you need something that's more advanced, if you need complex logic for the batch changes you make, then you could be using C# scripts, or you could be using Semantic Link Labs. And now just to clarify, so that there are 2 options available in Fabric. There's Semantic Link, which is the main offering, the main feature of Fabric basically, which allows for data scientists or people who prefer to go at things using Python to create notebooks that can interact with the data in the models, and also benefit from all of the calculations and so on that have already been defined in the semantic models. Me, myself, I'm not a Python aficionado, so my experience in this area is unfortunately quite limited. But I really like the fact that, I mean, going back to the talk we had earlier about how the semantic model is sort of the central nervous system, that it has now also become easily accessible to data scientists. And through semantic links through SymPy, so that you can write and execute DAX queries and benefit from all of the business logic that has already been built into the model as you're doing data science things on top of this using notebooks. And now Semantic Link Labs, as I understand it, is sort of a library that you can pull in that lets you edit not just access the data of the model, but also all of the metadata. So all of the various objects and properties in the semantic model, and it even lets you write changes back to it. So you can use it for batch changes or things that are similar to the C# script that we showed earlier. And you can even do some of the other. So that's I believe Semantic Link Labs is maintained by Michael Kowalski from the Fabric CAT team at Microsoft, and he has done a lot of work into making a lot of the features that are accessible on other tools like the best practice analyzer and Vertipack analyzer for things like statistics on the model metadata. All of this is now available as scripts or commands you can call in Semantic Link Labs. And I think one of the main advantages of that is that it's super easy to pull that into some sort of pipeline for automation purposes. So let's say you wanted to make a complete audit of all of the best practice rules across all of your models in your tenant. Well, you could certainly use Tabular Editor and just open the models one by one and then run the best practice analyzer and see what's there. You could also use Tabular Editor 2, which has a command line interface, to sort of set up something that's more automated. But now with Fabric and Semantic Link Labs, I think it's nice that there's an integrated first-party solution where you can apply these. You can run this best practice analysis directly from the notebook, and you can then add the notebook to some CI/CD pipeline, for example, as part of your continuous integration and deployment workflow. So I'd say Semantic Link Labs is fantastic for things like automations or when you want to batch operations across multiple models and reports across your tenant. So yeah, that's what I wanted to call out regarding Semantic Link Labs. So yeah, so to sum up, basically, because I don't want to go too much over time. I think it's important to notice in these discussions that one size rarely fits all. Semantic model development is a complex business, and there's a lot of stuff you need to know about. There's a lot of new offerings, as we've seen, coming from Microsoft over the past few years. And it can be difficult, especially for newcomers in this field, to navigate all of this, to know what tool to use when. Tabular Editor is not a replacement for these offerings, just like many of these offerings cannot fully replace Tabular Editor. Well, it all depends on what you emphasize and what you prioritize as a model developer. Yeah, but what it is, what Tabular Editor is, it's our attempt basically as creating a one-stop shop, a tool that contains everything we believe is important for rapid and efficient model development. The tool is built by people who have created models for several years. As I said, I used to work as a consultant in this space before I started working on Tabular Editor. So we know your pain. we know the common challenges that arise when you create these enterprise-sized semantic models. And we try to come up with tooling that addresses this in the best possible way. And yeah, as I also tried to point out in the slide, Tabular Editor is more than just a way to edit your semantic models. In this day, I would say it's more like I sometimes call it an integrated development environment, an IDE, because it has a lot of features. And I mean, even the user interface itself looks like Visual Studio. So it is sort of like a feature-rich ecosystem. And for intermediate and expert developers out there, I would say it's a force multiplier to just make them even more productive and efficient.
It works great on widescreen monitors because you can pop out all the little modules and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even simple things like being able to undock windows. So if you're if you're on a widescreen or even if you have multiple monitors docked to your PC, you can just drag and drop and arrange the layout any way you like to be able to view like multiple query results at once, or like you can preview tables, simple things like that. We try not to limit you or hinder you in being as productive as possible and making sure that you have the information you need as you are developing your model. So yeah, I want to leave time for, I don't know if there were any questions that were left unaddressed during the stream, or if there's any last notes, anything we should discuss here towards the end.
I think that David and a few others have been pretty good. And Kurt and also and all have been helpful in the chat. Steve, was there anything? I think I saw everything addressed by David and others, unless there's anything remaining.
Have one very good question, which I think we've saved to the end because I think this is a great time to do it. From James.
Yeah.
All right. So with Power BI Desktop adding new pro-dev features like DAX Query Review and Template Review all the time, what is your vision for the future of Tabular Editor? All right. So great question, James. So I think, and I hope that that point also came across during my presentation. So of course we're a small team, so it's not like we don't regard ourselves as competitors to Microsoft. We just try to focus on the things, the small things that make sense for us. With our experience as model developers, little things like being able to partially execute a query, like I showed earlier, or when I'm looking at some data that I can easily filter and sort, and all of these I typically call them quality of life improvements, because that's the sort of thing that that's important for us. So as a lot of you probably have noticed, that we don't have any AI or CoPilot features built into Tabular Editor. I know that that's stealing a lot of attention at Microsoft these days, and I'm afraid that at some point it also kind of takes away focus from other stuff, like especially some of the smaller quality of life features that are not showstoppers in any way, but they are more nice to have than need to have. But in my experience, it's and at least with the feedback that we get from our customers, they actually really like that we pay attention to these nice to have features. These are the things that make sense for them. Also, I think one thing that we can offer our customers is that, again, being a small team, if you write a support ticket, you get in touch with our developers. You get in touch with me or some of my colleagues directly, and we can actually, I mean, it's like we actually do our best and try to help you in solving your problem. And again, that's also a lot of the feedback that we are getting from our customers, is that they are really happy with this agreement. They actually feel that we can help them. So yeah, that's I think that's just some of the benefits of being a small team, and that we can decide the directions we want to go, and we can listen to our customers and what they want and what they need. And I think we will just keep doing that as well as we can. We don't have any, well, we have a few interesting bigger feature announcements on our roadmap. One of them that I'm very keen to, and some people may have already noticed that lately our M expression editor has gotten a revamp, so the colors are now a little bit better for the syntax highlighting. And behind the scenes, we are actually working on making this editing experience on par with the DAX editing experience, because as you notice right now, there's no IntelliSense here like in our DAX editor. But we do actually have an M parser, which is a prerequisite for creating IntelliSense-like features. And we want to hook that up to the editor, so you get the same productive experience of editing M code in Tabular Editor as you do when you're editing DAX code. So that's one of the big features that we are continuously working on. But while we're doing that, we are continuously fixing and improving minor things, small quality of life things. And it seems like that's what our customers want at the end of the day. So we'll just keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, and to your point as well too, just with the idea around, I think, the M code and getting a parser in there, like I know for myself and a few other people, like that's one of those last like missing big puzzle pieces that like can essentially move development almost entirely to there, because it's having that will help a lot from versus kind of like blindly copy and pasting from, say, ChatGPT or others, which writes it well enough, but it's having any additional assistance on M code stuff will be fantastic once that gets added.
Yeah, absolutely. And for sure, we are not going to even try to replicate the Power Query editing experience, because personally, I believe Power Query is a fantastic product. I use it all the time. I really like the ability to just push some buttons in the UI and then it applies all the transformations that I need. What we are aiming for here is the code editing experience, because we believe we have the best DAX code editor in the world, and now we also want to have the best M code editor in the world. I think the M code editing experience right now in Power BI, the advanced editor, which is called, it's little more than a text editor at this point. So I think we can do better than that, and that's what we're aiming for.
I think Tabular Editor definitely feels like a tool made by developers, made for developers, and I think a lot of people appreciate that, those little things, right? And just looking at your DAX editor, it's if you've ever used Visual Studio and the plugins, right? You take a lot from that. So
exactly. I like to compare ourselves to Redgate, even though Redgate is a huge company. We can't really compare, but Redgate has this huge offering of productivity enhancing tools for SQL Server, so for the relational database engine. Of course, you can make do using only SQL Server Management Studio, and a lot of people do that, and that's perfectly fine. However, if you want to get the real SQL developer editing experience in Management Studio, then you have to use the Redgate plugins, because they just make the development experience so much more developer friendly, basically. And that's sort of the same thing that we are aiming for, but for semantic models.
And just one quick little I guess kind of a question from Chris, but I think it's important to address what you mentioned earlier to reiterate this. Is he wanted to know, so like, whether or not Power BI or whatever aim to be a comprehensive IDE like Tabular Editor. And I'll say, like, Microsoft has officially stated this. I've had this from Mario Romano, who's on the team, who like basically is the he's the lead senior program manager for TMDL and all that other stuff. And they are adding pro-like features to Power BI Desktop, but it is never intended to be a true pro tool. They're just trying to make it a bit easier for the hybrid, like, pro/casual developer, but like it's never meant to bridge the gap all the way to a Tabular Editor scenario. And I'm sure you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, and I mean I fully agree with Rui on that, because I think the main selling point of Power BI is so easy to get started, so easy to use. It's like PowerPoint for data, right? And I know it's probably a cliche at this point, but it's an important point actually, because it is actually, I mean, considering what Power BI can do, how complex it is, you have to know about semantic models and reports and everything. It's impressive that people who have never used Power BI before are actually able to get an actual dashboard up and running in a few hours, and that's the real strength of Power BI. That's what it does. But that's just not something that enterprise or professional semantic model developers, it's a different tool in my point. They need something else. But I fully understand why Microsoft have made a tool that speaks to the masses, because I mean that's a way to get people on board with Power BI, and it works, and it's fantastic. But trying to cram too much enterprise stuff into Power BI will probably detract these users. It can easily become too complex. I mean, even things like the template view, while it's amazing that they now have a way for users to access every single semantic model object and property, if you showed the template view to someone who's just learning Power BI, they would run away screaming.
Yeah.
So
fair.
So I think it's I mean, I fully understand why Microsoft is doing what they're doing. I mean, if Microsoft really wanted to address the pro developers, then they should probably invest more in things like Visual Studio or VS Code or something like that for semantic model and report development at a more enterprise level. I don't think Power BI desktop as it stands now would be the proper place to do that. You would scare off too many newbies if you did that.
Agreed. Yeah, it's you gotta crawl before you walk, before you run.
Yeah, fully agree.
Excellent.
So yeah, so I don't know if you're not sharing my screen anymore, are you? But I just wanted to call out on a closing note here a few resources. So we already talked about Tabular Editor Learn, but then of course there's also the main site, which as I said, there's a rebrand coming soon. But on the main site, if you're interested, you can find all about our pricing. You can get a quote. There's an FAQ and how to contact us. And of course, we have presence on LinkedIn as well, and we have a newsletter also. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure to close on that remark. Otherwise, my marketing colleague will will hit me over the head if I didn't flag this.
No worries at all. And yeah, good links for these. They'll be in the description as well for a lot of this stuff for people watching later. So definitely check out either the tool or the free learning platform, which is really fantastic. Again, especially with the model that Kurt Buehler built for that.
Oh yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. Really cool features there. I think I remember seeing a slide in Tabular Editor the first time I ever heard of it, and it described it as a fancy JSON editor. Many years ago, and we've come a very long way, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's amazing what can happen when you. I mean, when you encounter certain frustration and you just think, okay, let's see if I could choose how I wanted a tool to look and feel and work in order for me to solve this problem faster. And then you just sit down and build that, and then given enough time, you end up with Tabular Editor 3. So that's and as I said, I had a long list of new features that I want to call out. I only managed to cover a fourth of them. But who knows? Maybe we'll have an opportunity to do another stream sometime where we'll dive deeper into the features. But I think it was also very important to have this discussion around Tabular Editor in the larger ecosystem, just to address some of the uncertainty that has been lately.
I agree, and I think that this has helped provide a lot of good clarification on the how, where, why, and when, essentially use cases for that. Not only just with Power BI directly, just with standard semantic modeling, but then like where does it plug into the ecosystem in Fabric?
Yep.
So I think this has been a very good to help clear up a lot of that. So thanks for sharing all of that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So come back to us here. Pop you up there. There you go. All right. Well, with that, Daniel, I think we are. Yeah, I don't see any other questions, so I think we're golden on this. This has been a very active chat. I saw spikes of upwards mid-40s, I think, for viewership.
Nice.
So a good amount of people tuning in today, which is always great. And I'm sure plenty more will be watching the replay. So hope. I will definitely make sure to not have it be 3 years to get you back on again next time. I didn't realize it had been nearly that long. Yeah.
No, it actually surprised me as well, because it felt well, not just like yesterday, but I mean it didn't feel like that long ago.
Exactly.
But,
Yeah. Time speeds up the older we get, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but again, it was a pleasure to be here, and definitely hoping to come back sometime again in the future. And good luck with your new endeavor, analytics endeavors. It's going to be exciting to see how that takes off.
Absolutely. And then, looking forward to getting you back on next time. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. And you as well, Steve.
Thank you so much.